Good afternoon. My name is Clay Collins. I'm a professional home inspector in the state of Texas. I'm also a certified master inspector with InterNACHI. I have code certifications. I am a residential code inspector. I'm a commercial code inspector, an energy code inspector, also inspecting for ADA or accessibility. And we've got a home here that I think you'd like to see me inspect. This home is built in 1952, so it's about 73 years old. And you hear some of this noise around us. We're about 2 miles from Hobby Airport. And we'll just let that airplane pass. If we're lucky, they won't land on this street. This house is a single-family residence, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. And the thing to know about it is this neighborhood sort of developed not too long after World War II, and Hobby Airport was a booming airport at that time. About 5 years after this house was built, they started moving to Intercontinental Airport, and this entire area sort of saw a decline. But recently it's picked up. You have a lot of homes around here that have been reconditioned, remodeled, and the home we're going to inspect today has been reconditioned and remodeled. The interesting thing about homes that are that old is you don't know what repairs have been made. You don't know whether the Harvey homeowner did it or it was done with permits and inspections. So that's when you start getting some interesting things that show up and things that most homeowners are simply not going to know or understand, and that's where the value is of third-party home inspector. So join me and we'll do this inspection. One of the most important things about any home is the roof, and the reason for that is it's expensive to replace. The state of Texas requires that I report evidence of repair, and I do see repair on this. We're going to go up on it, but I see evidence of repair. InterNACHI does not make us go onto the roof. That's one of the exclusions. Texas says go onto the roof, walk the roof, unless it's unsafe, unless you're going to damage the roof, unless there is some prevailing condition that keeps me from going up there. We have a 1-story roof. It's not too steep. There's no thunder, there's no lightning, though it did rain this morning. So I don't see any reason not to go on the roof. So join me. One of the important things is understanding how the underlayment was installed. The underlayment at the eave should be installed on top of this roof edge flashing, also known as the drip edge. And at the rakes, it's supposed to be installed underneath. In this particular case, the underlayment is installed beneath the drip edge. What that means is if the roof begins to fail and you have water leaks beneath the shingles, that will run down, run beneath the drip edge, and you have a risk of damage here. We can see it's been repainted, but I don't see any evidence of deterioration. I see some painting. They've scraped it and painted, but no damage. So it's wrong. Is it material? I don't think it's material in this case. So let's keep going. So here's evidence of repair. And as I said, I'm required under the state standards to report. I'm not required to note workmanship, the quality of workmanship. But if it's a poor workmanship, we know it's going to fail, so that is important and is something I report. Where these repairs have been made seems to be around all the penetrations. So it looks likely, just based on the age of the roof, that the flashing failed, and they came in and redid it. This, however, is new. That may be part of the remodel. That looks to be a vent like a mechanical exhaust for a bathroom, for a laundry room, or a dryer. And I see that the screw heads that they've installed it with have not been sealed. And that's a possible source of penetration, water penetration. And that will be reported. Here we have ridge vents. We have the ridge vents, and in this particular case, we probably have soffit vents and we probably have gable vents. I didn't walk around the house yet. We jumped to the roof. That's something we'll follow up on. Here we have repair of the ridge vent, the cap, and repairs at more plumbing penetrations. We have more repairs at a plumbing vent, again, a roof penetration. The same thing here and down here. Now, something interesting and not good is that we have the shingles that are damaged. And if you'll notice the crease and the crease and the crease, what that's telling me is that shingle was loose and flipped up like this and might even take them off the roof. So even though the roof shingles themselves don't look to be in bad shape, the fact that it's been repaired isn't problematic. Our real issue is the damage and the unsealed shingles. Wind, the very next wind, doesn't have to be a full-blown hurricane, just heavy wind can take these and just peel the shingles up. So these need some repair, just need to be not mechanically, but adhesive needs to be applied to keep them down. The alternative, of course, is to just write the roof off and replace it, or wait till that storm comes in. See, maybe insurance will cover it, maybe not. Can't tell you the age of the roof. I'm not required to tell you the age of the roof. Neither the state of Texas nor InterNACHI requires that. But we know that this is going to be susceptible to damage. We're going to start on the exterior next. Clearly, in a 1973 home, there's been plenty of opportunity for things to change. We don't see any soffit vents here at the front. When I did the inspection of the roof, I made a comment about having not looked at it, but we're going to determine exactly what kind of ventilation in addition to the ridge vents that we've got. I see evidence that things have been repainted. This wood looks intact. I don't see any evidence of scraping or priming. Neither do I really see anything that says that it's been replaced. This is all consistent with the age of the house. This looks intact and looks like it's in pretty good shape. I do note that the support posts here look new. I also see where they have removed the original metal posts. At this point, that's cosmetic. And as long as it's intact, I think you're in good shape. This is not really load bearing. It was just for aesthetics. And I look around some of the homes around me and I see the same thing where they've got posts that have been removed or replaced. So it's aesthetic. I don't see a problem with it. We're in good shape. Something interesting here is this garage door has been removed from service. It's been sealed. The locks have been removed. That looks like some spray foam insulation. Caulked. This has been caulked. So what they have done is remodeled and taken this door out of service. So when we're on the inside, I expect to find rooms have been converted from garage into something else. Wood shingles. There are homes up north that are still using this. This looks original. I see some places where they have come in and maybe done some things like they've hung this gate. That's not the best, the gate latch. That's not the best thing, but it's okay. So we see that they have attached the gate latch to the siding, and that won't typically hold because there's nothing here but battens, and these are layered. So in this area, there's really no support. So they've spread out the weight. That's not going to hold much pull or force, but there's nothing wrong with it right now. They've added these blocks here, and that might impede drainage. And I see here that there is what looks like a tree or a shrub or something used to be, and I see this concrete barrier that is missing here. It looks to me like a tree was lost probably during a storm. I see out here a high spot. A tree there may have been lost. I also see a demarcation of new sod and old sod. Now sometimes this kind of look means that there was foundation repair, and they came in and resodded after the foundation repair. We're going to keep looking. I don't see anything that says it was repaired. When we come back to the foundation, we'll talk about that. We see a couple of things here. We have a vent. Don't know what that's to. Remember, there's possible mechanical exhaust vent. There's possible dryer vent. This is the gable vent. So we know now that we have a gable vent and we have ridge vent. Evidence of repainting. So this was recently painted, and it was probably painted to make it, to improve the curb appeal. Somebody is clearly getting ready to either live in it after having reconditioned it, or rent it, or even flip it. We don't know the background on it. All we can do is inspect it as we see it today. We saw that the overhead door in the front had been decommissioned. This side exterior door has also, the knob is off, the hinges appear to have been ground off, and the entire door is caulked. So this was at some point an exterior door, and my best guess at this point is that it was from the garage to the exterior. And that speaks to the fact that this house has probably been remodeled on the inside. We see a little flaking down here on the paint. Well, that's not a big deal. All paint flakes. But that speaks to the fact it's been repainted. These look like shiny new hinges, and they're spring-loaded. So this door is also a part of what's been reconditioned. I don't see that it's a problem, simply that it's been worked on. We have soffit vents. I see two locations where we have soffit vents. So now we know that we have gable vents, soffit vents, and ridge vents. And all of those should work together to ventilate the attic. Now, something to know is there's a lot of discussion about whether you should have gable and ridge. You don't want to create a circumstance where you get cavitation and flow like this. So instead of coming from the bottom up, it just comes from the side and through the ridge vent. There's a lot to be said about it, and you have the best way to do it. But what really matters is, does what they have work? So when I go in the attic, I'm going to look and see if there's evidence of humidity, see how hot it is. It should be within about 20 degrees of the outside temperature. It's 80 degrees here now, so if it's more than 110 degrees in the attic, we have a problem. If not, it's okay. What I see here says that, I'm guessing this is the kitchen window because there's the clean out. We have this gap that hasn't been sealed. It's missing a backflow preventer. But look what's going on here. They got rid of the original shake. That's cement board. This is trim. So what went on here to cause to require the replacement of this? Strongly suspect that you have the kitchen window right there, and that there was some plumbing problem. And it's pretty difficult to get this down here in the great state of Texas where we don't use it much. So probably they just came in and found a way to replace that and make it look as good as they could. I see that we have one solar screen. That the front of the house faces just almost due north, the back due south. So we're going to end up having some setting sun that'll hit these windows, and it looks like they just decided they needed solar screens in some of them. That window's been replaced. This bathroom window's been replaced. All of the others, well, I haven't been inside, but they're very likely to be original. This is going to be the AC condensate drain. Hopefully it's the secondary. And here we have more soffit vents. And I see layered, so it looks like somebody cleaned up the soffit vents. Probably it was necessary when they ran new air conditioning and poked a hole through the soffit for that, poked a hole there. And that's okay. What you have is somebody recognized the problem, they did the installation, and they came back and sealed it. Good for them. I also see some evidence that windows have been replaced. This is the original putty type glazing bead, and this is a caulked glazing bead, putty. So somebody came in and replaced windows, probably as a part of reconditioning. They just identified windows that were broken and replaced them all. Now this is interesting. That border of concrete there, it really doesn't serve a purpose from the foundation point of view. It may have been their way of controlling drainage. It may have been a way of controlling the grass, keeping them from having to weed eat against the house. We have another gable vent. And the design before the ridge vents came into popularity would be that air would come in through the soffit and out through the gable ends, and then across the attic from gable end to gable end. This is a standard mild steel, aka rebar, foundation. Now I see this and noted it was new sod, but I am not feeling any humps or depressions. And when there's foundation repair, you normally see movement of the dirt one way or the other. Most people don't go to the trouble of scraping it down and then putting the sod. I have not seen any evidence yet of foundation repair. And we're back where we started. So if we want to just wrap up the outside, we've seen a lot of reconditioning. We've seen a lot of painting. We see that they have abandoned the overhead door and they've abandoned an exterior side door. But we don't see anything that says it's wrong. We just note that there's been a lot of cosmetic work. Has it hidden anything? Has the work done hidden anything? I'm really not seeing anything that makes me concerned about that. Most of the wall is probably the original wood shingle, except for that one area that is probably due to some plumbing problems. And yeah, that's me just sort of extrapolating what I see and said best guess is plumbing. But I don't think we're hiding anything with the new paint. I don't think we're hiding anything with the new sod. I don't think we're hiding anything with the work we've seen done. So it looks good. Well, in addition to the roof, one of the most important systems is the foundation. Remember, the house is 73 years old, so it certainly had opportunity to move. And as I walk up, right here in the very front, at the front door, I see a crack. This is a part of the foundation. This was poured monolithically with the rest of the house. There is no cold joint. So we have a crack, and if you come all the way over here, you see that it's gotten wider. It doesn't follow that, but it has certainly gotten wider. Now, one of the problems when you look at something like this is how much reconditioning that was done inside and outside hides foundation movement. We'll look at that closer inside, but we just have to expect that we're not going to see everything that will clue us into the performance of the foundation. I see other cracks here that don't even extend all the way to here. So that's the only crack so far that's problematic. Let's walk the rest. Now, since this was originally a one-car garage, this was the apron. This is where they would park. So this area right here is a drop down. You have that little curb that's built there. Don't see any cracking in it. We'll follow up on that from the inside. We see this driveway that has settled. Well, the choice is the foundation heaved or the flatwork settled. It's more likely that this flatwork settled because we have this crack through here. Now, the standards of practice, both the state of Texas and InterNACHI, do not require that we inspect flatwork. So I see that. Do I bother reporting it? Yes, and there's one reason I report it. We're required to report as deficient things that are unsafe. How likely is it that somebody's going to trip on this? They don't have to trip now. They can trip later. It could be your guest that trips. We have some issues over here. So to me, this damage, this cracked flatwork, has the potential for injury to whomever is walking here. I'd report that as deficient. On the back side of this foundation, we're not seeing any cracks. I will note to you something that I consider very important. If you come up to a house and they have a lot of things stored against it. I may be pessimistic, but the first thing I think of is, are they trying to hide something? If they store blocks and bricks and wood and other things, did they do that on purpose? Not always. Most of the time they just don't understand that it has a negative impact on the foundation to do that. We have some busted out concrete here, and that is at the drain. And again, I believe this is the kitchen, so that's really not damage. It's just where the drain came through the concrete there, and it's probably always been that way. So for the foundation, we see a little movement there at the front in that porch stoop where it goes to the foundation itself. We'll have to look on the inside for a little bit more information, but there is no evidence on the outside that there is a foundation failure. Down to one of the worst parts of an inspection down here in the coastal area. We're going to have to test the heat. It's got to be done. So we're going to reset the thermostat on cool to where we found it, and we're going to take it and we're going to cycle off. Give it just a second, and we're going to go to heat, and it's set to 64 degrees. Interior is 76 degrees, so I have to go higher than 76. We're at 78. Now, we started at 80, and here we're at 76. So in just that period of time where we did the evaluation of the heating or the cooling system, it dropped 4 degrees. That, in addition to the temperature differential, speaks to the fact that it's working well. When we evaluated the cooling system, we looked at the temperature differential between return to the AC system, that's where the filters are, and the supply to the rooms, as the air drops to the room. When we're looking at the heating system, we can certainly evaluate a temperature drop, but I think more important is that we look and see the quality of those flames. We don't want yellow, white, red. We don't want flickering flames. We want a good, clean blue burn. And that tells us that the system is working well. As part of inspecting the system, though, we have to make sure that this has a sediment trap. Here's the sediment trap right here. I'll note that a lot of times you'll see a sediment trap here on either side of this valve. But the code says that that sediment trap has to be as close to the appliance as possible or feasible. We're going to start on the HVAC. And the first thing that I recommend is you document what the thermostat is set to. Because if you change it, if you leave it set to cool, if you leave it set to heat, somebody's going to get upset with you as an inspector. So the first thing I do is identify the thermostat or thermostats. And then what we want to do is figure out what it's set to. And this one is set to 80 degrees on cool. Well, 80 is pretty high. Most of the systems today are designed to run about 75 degrees. I suspect that this was left high because nobody was here and they just didn't want to spend the money. So what we want to do, since we have plenty of freedom here, is go from 80 down to 70, and that'll just let the system run. And we're going to let the system run while we're doing some of the other HVAC inspection, because I don't want to start recording temperatures at the registers until it's had time, generally about 20 minutes, to get to the operating temperature. Just like on the outside, I try to determine the age of the appliance. 2023, just like the outside. And the furnace also 2023. Now, whether I put this information in my report or not, I've got it, because sometimes people come back, they ask questions. It's always good. You're not required to put it there, but there's nothing wrong with having information. So we've looked at the equipment, the HVAC equipment, and now we need to evaluate the performance. There's a lot of ways to do that. The best way would be to take readings on either side of the evaporator coil. That means you're going to get the best temperature reading as close to the coil as possible. But the reality of it is that most inspectors aren't willing to poke holes into the plenum and into the ductwork and into the other areas because it creates a leak, and any damage they're responsible for. And the other part of that is that system can be cooling very well, but we don't know about the performance of the supply air. So there are different ways to measure this. You have needle thermometers, you have a lot of specialty thermometers, but one of the things I like is my fancy FLIR camera. Please do not call this a toy. It is a tool. It costs enough to be a tool, not a toy, but there's a lot of fun that you can have with it. So we're letting it calibrate here, and we'll just walk around, see what we've got. We've got a filter here that is a 20 by 25. That's 500 square inches. Do we see any other returns? No returns. And when we were in the attic, we did not have a large media filter. That means we're relying on the filters down here. We have one, and we have two. So we have 12 by 24 and 20 by 25. So we have 500 square inches, and we have 140, we have 288, so a total of 788 square inches of return air filters. We have a 3.5 ton AC unit. One of the worst things you can do is not allow yourself enough return, and you sit there starving the system, which might prevent it from operating in the heat mode. But in the cooling mode, what's going to happen is it's going to suck those filters in, and you're going to have dust bypass them, and they're going to whistle like crazy, and it'll drive you crazy listening to the whistling. We don't have that here. We have enough filtration. So since we are going to measure supply at these registers, these air drops, with the thermal camera, I'm starting here as far away from the system as I can get. And we are seeing here a 50.7 degree supply air. And remember, it started at 80 degrees, so this number doesn't mean anything yet. And we have 64. And I want you to take a look here. Look at the laser. And you compare that to the camera, and you see that there's air coming out there. So there is a loss of air between the ceiling and the register. A couple of things can happen. First, that might draft air from the attic. And the other thing is you might get that air there that's warm and this is cold, and it'll create condensation that will lead to mold, condensation that'll trap dust, it'll turn dark and dirty, and you may even, I have seen where water just drips. Okay, that needs to be fixed, and one way to do it, they have an adhesive tape that has foam on one side. You just build a gasket. We have that same thing here. We have some air loss. Our temperature is still good, but we do have that air loss, and if you want to look at the laser, you can see right there where it's coming out. So it just needs to be reseated. Now, an interesting something is you have this supply air, and so far they've all pointed towards the outside wall. Even if that register, that drop were right here, it should point on the outside wall. You want to take the air off this wall and recirculate it. Otherwise, you get this warm area. It's going to be humid. It's going to be warm. You'll be uncomfortable here. Whether you end up with mold or not, who knows? But you won't be as comfortable in this room. So that air direction is proper. We're going to come back to the return. Here we have another supply drop. This one doesn't leak. We've got 50 degree air coming out here. We have no air loss there. We have 51 degrees coming out. And here we have 63 degrees. So it's a little higher than the others, but it's still okay. So now when we get to talking about the direction of airflow, This is a three-way vent. You throw a little bit that way and a little bit this way. So where do you really want that volume to come? In my opinion, it should come this way, because here are your sources of heat. So you want to get that heat off the wall and recirculate it. And you've got that return air there. So this creates a good airflow. So that's correct. And then we come here. 54. And we have one more. All right. This one is blowing that way. That one is blowing to the outside wall. And whether this is correct or not sort of depends on what they've done here. It's a metal door, and we have a pretty good step down. Now this is important to know. That step can't be more than 7.5 inches. Just like, 7 3/4 inches, just like any other stair. And that's okay. But that door cannot open outwards, because you cannot have a door open outwards over a step like that. The max that you would be able to have a step is 1.5 inches. So the door opens in perfectly fine. Here we have our dryer vent. Now if we sit here and look, remember when we did the exterior, we had a roof penetration on the roof that postdates the roof and is probably a part of this construction. And we had the vent to the outside. So what's happening here, more likely than not, and I'll prove it out, is that the dryer vent goes up and over, and the exhaust vent goes out. It's not the best thing to have the exhaust duct go straight up. So let's just make some guesses here. We have about 8 feet vertically, and then we have a 90 degree, and then we have, I'm just going to round it, and we have another 8. So if we take the 8 foot and the 8 feet, we have 16 feet. The 90 degree duct is the equivalent of 5 feet. So 16 plus 5 is 21 feet. 21 feet is not too much for a dryer exhaust. But the homeowner is going to have to make a habit of pulling that dryer out and making sure they clean that lint. And if they go too long and it gets too packed, it might take a professional. But every 6 months or so, pull the dryer out, just clean it, vacuum what you can, and you'll stay in good shape. When we measured air at the drops, we had one that was 49. Most of them were 52. We had a 54 and one here in the kitchen area that was much higher. But let's just take 52 as our average. And we're going to come on here and we're going to compare it to the return. And I have 72 degrees. Let's look at the bigger return. 71 degrees. So we have 72, 71. Actually, it just went up to 72. And 52. That's 20 degrees. We're looking in the state of Texas for anywhere between 15 and 22 degrees. So this system is performing. It seems to be performing at the higher end of the range, which is perfectly fine. I talked to you about the direction that the supply drop should be facing. Exterior walls, exterior windows, exterior doors. You want to move the heat so it recirculates. Properly designed, all of the air should be returned through the system every 12 hours. And that's why you need that flow. Well, here's a good way to illustrate this. Look at that airflow. You see hot zones, you have cold zones. And that kind of movement tells you exactly what kind of movement that you see throughout the house. You have the hot zones over here, you have the cold here, and you have that whole circulation of air. If it were all cold, the house might be too cold. If it was all hot, the system might not be working. But what we're seeing here is indicative of good performance. We've already set the thermostat on the inside. That's why the system is running now. We are not required to give any information on the age of this appliance, but it's a good idea to know what it is. Talk to your client about it, because you have a unit that's 2 years old, you can expect it to last longer than a unit that's 10 years old. So what I do is take a photograph of the label. And in this particular case, this unit was manufactured in 2023, and it's a 3.5-ton unit. To summarize the inspection of the HVAC system, the system cooled, the system heated, it had good distribution of air except at one drop in the kitchen. And in the attic, in that area, we saw what may have been an air leak. So that's something that should be followed up on, just because it's a waste of energy. But the system itself is performing, manufactured in 2023, so it's a newer system. I don't see anything there that's terribly scary. Just need to follow up on that vent and follow up on the flue pipe that's in near contact to the roof deck. Well, now we're going to do the plumbing. This particular house has the water meter in the front. The state of Texas requires that I say exactly where that's located. I'm sorry, not exactly, but enough that the homeowner knows where to find it. So this is in the street right of way, the utility right of way at the front of the street, right in front of the house. Now, something else that you can do, and it depends on the house as to whether I do it, I'm not required to. Here we have an older home. I really like to do it in the older homes, but this is the meter. And if you see right here, that star device is a leak detector. So we have an older home, we don't know the condition of the pipes, but I can look at this and tell you that there is no active leak. Nothing's running on the inside, and that's not spinning, so that's very good. And while that's being filmed, I'll just go turn the water on and you can see the result. And as I say, in older homes, I might take that extra step. I'm also required to tell the homeowner, my client, where the main water shutoff is. And you have it right here. That's a ball valve. If it's turned 90 degrees, it's off. So it's very easy for the homeowner to do. The important part is that the homeowner needs to know where it's located. This is missing a backflow preventer. I'm required to report that as deficient. Missing backflow preventers, missing air gaps, missing check valves, things like that. Here we have 60 PSI. 40 is the minimum, 80 is the maximum, 60 is right there in the middle, and that's excellent water pressure. As a part of the plumbing system, we have gas. So let's go to the back and look at the gas. The gas meter in this particular case is located at the utility easement at the back of the property. When they built this house, the utilities all came through here. We had the overhead power, but we had all the drains, the sewers down here in the back. The gas was run in the back. The reason they stopped that is because over time they had to do repairs, and when they came to do it, they had to remove fences, they had to remove storage buildings, they had to remove all sorts of debris. Now that they have started putting the utilities in the front, a lot of the utilities in the front, like the sewer, now they do the underground tunneling and they don't have to tear the buildings down. Regardless, this is where the gas meter is. This is how they would shut it off. There's a hole right here, and if you turn that to line it up here, that's how the utility company will padlock it and lock the homeowner out or whomever to keep them from turning the gas back on when the utilities aren't paid. That is a very tough to operate valve. It takes a pretty powerful wrench and pretty strong arm to turn it. And then the gas supply goes this direction. This is where the gas enters the house. Now, what's the condition of the pipe between there and the other? I have no way of knowing. I can crawl along the ground and sniff, but if we don't have anything obvious, all we can really do is see this is the path for the gas. And this is bonding the gas pipe, the metal gas pipe, to the electrical ground system. That has been added. That is not something that you would have seen on a house built 73 years ago. You'll see that the hose bib on the backyard is also missing the backflow preventer. You'll also see it's copper. That little ding doesn't seem to have a material deficiency, but it is copper. Now, is the rest of the house copper? We don't know, but when this house was built, the prevalent gas pipe was galvanized steel. Galvanized steel would be a terrible thing right now because its lifespan is about 40 years. So it's important that we know what the rest of the house has in terms of gas pipe. And I'm required to report type of water pipe. When we're inside the house, we evaluate the plumbing, this is crazy, by turning the water on. And doing what we can to see if there might be leaks. And back here, I see copper water pipes. We're going to let that water run a little bit. And I'm running it on hot, and there is a reason for that. Let's go into the restroom and I'll explain that. So we have the water running in the kitchen on hot. I'm turning the lavatory on hot. I'm turning the tub on hot. Now the state of Texas only requires that I operate 2 fixtures at one time. But my practice is to operate all of them at one time in the primary bathroom or in the bathroom, depending on the age of the house. An older house, I might do exactly this, turn every fixture on. The total number of fixtures here is only 3. And what we're looking for is to see if there's a terrible slowdown. There's going to be some slowdown, but not a terrible slowdown. And the reason I do it on hot is most loss of pressure is on the hot water side because you start having performance problems with the water heater. So what I'm going to do is say, yes, we have hot water. And I'm going to now turn cold water on, and you'll see the volume picked up. Everything else is on hot. Now I'm going to turn this to cold, and now we're going to go back to the kitchen and turn it to cold. So now we're moving to the kitchen. This is still on hot, and I'm changing it to cold. And we have good pressure on the hot side and good pressure on the cold side. And the other thing that I accomplish by doing this is I determine that the orientation of the handle is correct on all 3 fixtures. In this particular case, we're not paying the water bill. We have an older home. We don't have any real understanding of the drain system. This would be a good opportunity to sell the sewer scope service to the client. InterNACHI has some great programs, and the inspector outlet has some cameras and other things that would be available to you for inspecting those scopes. When it comes to inspecting the toilet, the water closet, I have developed a practice of standing on either side of the bowl and wiggling my legs. That's the best way to determine if that bowl's loose. And then I take the tank and I make a rocking movement back and forth. This bowl is tight, the tank is tight, we're in good shape here. The other thing I do as a practice is I take a photograph of the inside of the toilet. And what I'm doing is looking at the valve, I'm looking at the flapper, the float. Do not let that go in the water. I have a good photograph of purple water coming out of a tub faucet. And then you have to say, where does purple water come from? Well, purple water comes from Tidy Bowl. So it turned out that that tube was in the water and it had siphoned backwards and was coming out the tub. The only reason we knew it was because the water was purple. And then what I have are photographs that proved that I looked at it. I don't have to put that in the report, but I know that I did a test of that system. Part of the plumbing system is the water heater. And if you look here, you see that we see copper water pipes again. And so far what that means is every location we could see the water pipe. Here at the water heater, underneath the lavatory, underneath the kitchen sink, and the hose bibs outside are all copper. So that speaks well. It's very likely that they have updated everything to copper. Another thing that I take a picture of, just for my information, is the age of the water heater. We have a 29-gallon water heater manufactured in 2018. 2018, 29 gallons. There's a way to determine the size of the water heater, and it's called the first hour rating. And you see that it says how much hot water you get in the first hour of use, and this one says 62 gallons. Now this is a 29-gallon water heater that is saying that it can provide 62 gallons of hot water in the first hour. What's happening is that it's assuming that you get up in the morning in the first hour, and this is as hot as it's going to be. It's controlled by the thermostat setting. And then you start taking and using the water. Well, you apply a certain number of minutes for a shave, a shower, a bath, the dishwasher, laundry. You take all of those things and say that in the first hour, these are the usage of water that you're going to get. And if it's under 62 gallons, this water heater is perfectly fine. There's also another way to do it. It's just a rule of thumb. And it says you have one bathroom, 30 gallons. A bath and a half, 30 gallons. Two bathrooms, 40 gallons. Three bathrooms, now you start getting into numbers that are much higher. And they make a 50-gallon water heater, which might be fine for a 3-bedroom house. The problem is it's so big you can't get it into certain places. So at that point, you start seeing two 40-gallon water heaters. And then if you're in a 4-bedroom or a 4-bathroom or greater, you start seeing two 50-gallon water heaters. What does that mean here? Not much. That's just for your information. Here, what it means is a 30-gallon water heater is good enough for this house. The state of Texas requires that I test this relief valve. It also says that I don't have to test the valve if I think that it will cause a problem. So let's talk about the kind of problems that it could create. We have this pipe that goes out. Where does it go out? Well, when we did the outside, I noted that it goes to the patio, the porch stoop. That's perfectly fine. It's safe. What's another reason that you might not test it? Well, the most common reason is the age of the water heater. We have 2018. The manufacturer of this valve says that it should be removed and inspected every 3 to 4 years and replaced if necessary. Well, there's no way a plumber is going to remove that valve, look at it and say, it's okay, and put it back. So what the manufacturer is basically saying is that valve should be replaced every 3 to 4 years. But more importantly is that the homeowner is required, is instructed by the manufacturer to test that every year. It's an incredibly complicated test. There you go, the water's coming out. But a lot of inspectors will not test that because when you reseat it, very often in an older valve, it won't shut off. And then the homeowner, of course, thinks the inspector broke it. So I go and make a decision on every single valve. There's some home inspectors who don't test any of them. And I would caution them that if they are not going to test that valve, the standard of practice requires that they tell the homeowner during that first contact that they're not going to test the valve. And I think a lot of them don't do that. You have to be careful. If it's more than 3 years old, you can start saying there's a good reason not to test it. But up to that point, it really should be tested. After 3 years old, it's a judgment call. So this is where the water came out when it was tested. And you'll notice this one's dry, this one's wet. This one was for the safety pan, and this one's for the safety valve. We have a little bit of dripping there. So the question is, will it continue to drip, or will it just get rid of the rest of the water in that line and stop? That becomes a real problem if it doesn't stop dripping, and that's how some inspectors validate their decision not to test that valve. Here it stopped. We tested it, it reseated, we don't have a problem. I think we're in good shape here. Another very important part of the house is electrical. Now, remember the house is 73 years old. I promise you this is not the original box. And we don't know what the original box was. We don't care what the box was. What we care about is how is it right now. This is a GE box. I don't have any particular problem with GE. But what I do have a problem with is how low this wire is. It should be at least 10 foot above this area. And the way they would do that today is run that straight through the roof, 3 feet above the roof, and then it would go to the outside. I would suggest that this be fixed. I really think this is something that's important, because how many kids are going to come out here and try to do something stupid with that electrical work? And as an inspector, I don't want them to come back to me and say, well, you should have told me. So that's very important and should be fixed for safety. Here's the inside of this box. Well, I see a couple of things here. First, it's missing spacers. I'm required to report that. It's missing labels. It's not so much that the standard says I need to report those as missing, but it does mean that I might not be able to evaluate some of the breaker sizes for the things that they're attached to. You have a GE brand that's actually supposed to have that label, and if not, I'll sometimes report that. Well, let's take the cover off and see if we can do that without dying. Not dying is an important part of every inspection. Well, we have a bit of a mare's nest in here. And technically, those should be run neatly. But you have an old box, and look right here, going through this conduit. It looks to me like a lot of circuits have been redone. I don't know how many were added, but certainly redone. We have some neutrals that are discolored, so those are older. We have some neutrals that are clearly newer. It looks to me like the interior of the box is being redone, breakers added. Look how new these look compared to some of these. You have copper. This is all copper. So, like I say, a little bit of a mess, but I don't see any evidence of overheating. I don't see any real problem. We have this that was added, and you'll note that this is a GFCI. That wasn't required until about 25 years ago. Okay. Not pretty, but I don't see a problem. Another a successful inspection of the distribution panel. I did not die. After the inspection of the distribution panel, we need to look at the branch circuits, the outlets, and the things that are connected to them. So you have a receptacle here. It's not a plug. The plug goes into the receptacle. You have a receptacle here, which is also considered to be an outlet. We have a light that is also considered to be an outlet. The outlet is where the electricity is used. So we're going to run through, and InterNACHI says a sample of the receptacles. Well, the state of Texas says every receptacle. So let's just start in here. We're not going to make you watch me test every single receptacle, but there is a pattern that I want you to see. You just start on one area and go all the way around. So we're going to finish this out in this room just as an example of how I would test every receptacle. But now we come into here and we see something unusual. You'll note that this is what's called an ungrounded receptacle. That does not have the ground. This one is new, but it has not been updated. Well, too many times what happens is during some sort of update, the homeowner puts in a grounded receptacle without a ground conductor, which means you have an open ground. So why is it in here and not the other? Well, it looks like the other was a part of a remodel, whereas this one just looks like it was part of reconditioning. So over here on this wall, we have one that is grounded. And it has an open ground. So this is a deficiency. One of those receptacles should be installed here. And then here we have another ungrounded. Well, this device is a 3-light tester. And it does a pretty good job of telling you if it's ungrounded, if the hot and neutral are reversed, if the ground and neutral is reversed, if even, well, there's several things that it can tell. It's not perfect. It doesn't tell you everything, but it's better than nothing. But I can't test it here. I was going to use a non-contact voltage tester, but I don't have that with me. Some people call it a stupid stick because if you use it wrong, you feel real stupid when you get electrocuted because you didn't understand what was going on. But you'll see that the labels are worn off of this. That's not in very good shape. And it just so happens that I have a new one here in the bag. So I am going to play a little game. This will become my new tester. And I'm going to take this old tester and I'm going to make an adjustment to it. So what I basically did was I took my older tester and I pulled the ground out. And that means I'm able to test it. Still, I can't tell anything other than it's got an open ground because, of course, there is no ground there. And it's not hot and neutral reversed. So I can't tell much, but I can tell a little bit. So now I'll keep this modified tool. Let's test these two over here. We have power and we have power. All right. Every room is supposed to have natural light or artificial light. And you should be able to walk into the room and turn the light on. So we have a light right here. And we have a light right here. And it looks to me like somebody drew a line there, and instead of putting the receptacle down, or the switch down here, they put it up there. I'm sure the only person that will identify that as a problem is the person's wife. We have a porch light, but now we have a switch that doesn't seem to go to anything. When they built this house, it was very common that a receptacle was used for a switched table lamp or a switched floor lamp. So we have an outside light and we have a switched inside light. And there's nothing wrong with that. When we get into the wet areas, this has to have a GFCI, and you'll see that it's grounded. The orientation is proper, hot and neutral aren't reversed. And I'm going to test the device, and that GFCI works. Okay. Let's look at the kitchen because we have another wet area. Every receptacle here serving countertops, it looks like it has an open ground. It looks like it has an open ground. And it looks like it has an open ground. So there's an issue here. This is not actually a code inspection. We're following the standards of practice, InterNACHI in the state of Texas. But the most recent code change, September 1, 2023, adopting the NEC, the 2023 NEC says that this cord and plug powered appliance needs to have a GFCI. This cord and plug appliance needs to have a GFCI. The dishwasher, the disposer, and the refrigerator all need to have cord and plug appliances need to have a GFCI. Since we're here and we're through with the electrical, let's look, here we have an anti-tip bracket for this range. Well, the thing about the anti-tip bracket is it's actually supposed to be installed. So this is something that needs to be repaired. But at least they have the bracket. Refrigerators. There is not a standard of practice for refrigerators because frankly they're not here very often. They're not in an inspection or they don't stay at the sale of the property. The handles are off. The handles are sitting up here. And I see, it looks like somebody painted the door. Perfectly fine, as long as if it's here and I'm going to inspect it, I just think, well, it's cold on that side. And it's freezing cold on that side, so I think that's working just fine. The dishwasher has to have what's called a hose loop. This is something that will keep the water from running from the sink backwards. So there's the hose, and it goes all the way up here. And that means that water would have to get higher than this point before it could possibly go back in there. Well, I promise you, if water gets higher than here, you have a different problem. So this is perfectly fine. And does it work? Yes. And the dishwasher switch also works. Okay. I normally do a better job of looking down the throat of the disposer to see if there's a problem before I turn it on. Lessons learned. Let's see what might have made that noise here. Looks like a little piece of plastic in there. And it's not going to affect. There you go. It'll grind out very shortly. Okay. So that's the appliances. You see this pull-down stairway has a hook. I'm not going to make you watch my search for the tool, but I did locate it. One of the things I consider important as a part of the mechanical inspection is this ladder. I can't tell you how many people have been injured, inspectors have been injured climbing these ladders. And it's typically a failure of the ladder. This one is cut even. It is installed with lag screws. It could have been installed with 16D nails, but frankly, lag screws are much better. From the perspiration dripping down my face, you can tell that we're inspecting the attic. Remember that on the outside, when we talked about ventilation, I said that we're looking for about a 20-degree difference. If the attic is within 20 degrees of the temperature of the outside, the performance is okay. And what I'm seeing here on the deck is 135. Well, the deck is not where we want to evaluate. So the proper way to do it would be a thermometer taking the ambient temperature. We do see the insulation has been added. So we see this vent right here that comes from that bathroom. And once upon a time, they just dumped it here to the soffit vent. The problem is the natural ventilation would pull air in there. So you're taking the hot, wet bathroom air, stick it in the soffit, and it comes in through the natural ventilation. So this has been required since 2006. As a part of inspecting the AC unit and the heat, we want to look up there and see that that furnace right there is less, the gas flue is less than an inch from that combustible decking. So that really should be adjusted a little, or that should be cut back a little. I also see over here at the ridge, they have added some structural members. It looks to me like oh, look at the decking right there. See the collapse of it? It looks like this was 3/8" decking, and it was very weak at the ridge. That ridge board itself may have been weak, and what they've come in and done is reinforced the ridge right here. And I note that it's just this isolated area, so it was probably isolated damage to the ridge board. Here is our gable vent, and there was screen on the outside, and they added it because the screen on the inside is damaged. And what I'm doing here is just looking for some air leaks at the ductwork. Again, you're not required as an inspector to do this by either the state of Texas Standards of Practice or the InterNACHI Standards of Practice. I see that there's some decking here. It's not the best decking in the world, but it goes back and it goes above that converted garage space. So it may be that this was their access and there never was access from that area. Okay, we've got a cold spot right there. there's about a 10-degree drop in temperatures right there. So there's some cold air getting to that area. I'll need to look at that from the ground or from inside the house. If you look at that ductwork right there, the cold spot is right here. So something is creating a cold spot there. And frankly, that would not have been discovered without the thermal camera. Let's see if we can find out what's causing that. Okay, that's going to be the kitchen air drop. So we came down out of the attic, we reset the thermostat, but we're still concerned about where that cold air came from. So let's walk in here to the kitchen, and we see this air drop, which looks intact. It's still hot because of the heat test, but we come over here, and I have some hot spots at the soffit, which is not unusual, but where did the cold air come from? We have some cold right here. Let's step back over here. All right, I have some cold air in this area. There's a possibility that there's an air leak right there. And if I'm not mistaken, this was the supply air register that had a higher temperature than the rest of them. So maybe there's an air loss in the attic causing that area to be cold, keeping us from having full air distribution here. That's something that should be followed up on, and I would basically I'd refer that to an HVAC company, because they'll need to pull this down and look and see if they can figure out where that air loss is. So that, I think, is important. It will create a problem over time if it's ignored. But we've also identified, okay, not just the cold, but now we have a real cause for the fact that that was the one supply air drop that had a higher temperature than any others. And if I had to summarize the inspection in the attic, I would say it was hot. It pretty much covers everything. But realistically, we've got a real problem over there with some air loss above the kitchen. And again, we wouldn't have found that without the use of the thermal camera. That happens to be a very expensive thermal camera, but there are some that are available to you that would be less expensive and just as valuable. So I would consider it. We're going to talk about the interior. Remember that on the outside, right in front of that door, we saw the crack that went through the porch stoop and into the foundation itself. We're not seeing any cracks here, but they've reconditioned everything. How likely is it that the drywall itself has been replaced? And if it's been replaced, it's going to hide movement. But let's look down here at the floor. We see some separation here. It could possibly be from foundation. It could also be that you're here on the outside and there's a lot of water that comes in here. You also have the draft of air that comes through here. So I can't guarantee that that reflects a foundation problem. But it's something to keep in mind when we're evaluating the foundation. These floors look original, and I can look at the corners or the edges, and you see that somebody has come in with a sander, and if you look over here, some people sanded better than others. That's cosmetic, doesn't even go in the report. But a lot of times you talk with a client and they just want to understand the house. And I would say it looks like the floors have been refinished. This all looks, at this point, original. We'll go to that other side later. This threshold looks new. This threshold looks new. So we'll come back to that room. That just tells me that there was some work done here. These walls are very clean for a 73-year-old home. I suspect a lot of drywall work was done. And I don't have a problem with that, but a well-written report is going to note that as a part of evaluating the foundation and the structure, you're looking for cracks, and there might be cracks that are now concealed. That's just some CYA, but it's a very good thing to put in the report. because sometimes they think you've got that crystal ball and you can tell not just what it used to look like, but what it will look like in the future. You see the same conditions. Looks like the walls have been redone. It's very nice texture that is not, we're not seeing repairs. A lot of times you can get it at an angle. So here's a good place. Look down here and you'll see that your texture is very clean. So there's a lot of work that's been done here which may hide evidence of structural movement. Simple closet. Oh, and look here. The design of this closet is consistent with what you would see in a home that was built in the 1950s. This is probably where a central heater was installed, not a cooling system. Back then, cooling was for rich folk. Heat is what you had to have. You're not required to have cooling, you're required to have heat for it to be a dwelling. So it looks to me like they took all of the HVAC equipment, moved it out of this closet into the attic, and just turned this into a little bit of a storage. And interestingly, that in today's world could not be a gas heater because it's in the bedroom. And what you cannot do is take air out of the bedroom for this. You have too much risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Again, the drywall has just been, well, it's clean. It looks like it's been redone. And we don't know whether the drywall itself was replaced or if they just textured. But it's pretty obvious that it's been reconditioned. In this room, we have one of those windows that was replaced. And this window is not an operable window. This window does not open and close. And because it does not open and close, this room has to have an exhaust vent. And it does right here. And there's your supply and your exhaust. So this would not have existed in 70 years ago. So this was updated. Looks like new tile, new fixtures. So somebody came in and did a lot of work. This area must have been the garage. Remember, we had a garage door that was abandoned. And if you look in here, you see that there is no garage door. So what they did was kind of abandon that in place, decommissioned it, got rid of the rails, sealed everything, put a wall over it, and now you have a laundry room. And you'll see that this is built up from that. The garage would have sloped from the back to the front. This floor has been built up, and you should be able to hear it. It's hollow. So they've built it up, they put decking on it, and then they put a wood floor, a tile floor. Okay. So if this is the garage, this would have been a solid wall. So they eliminated the garage, turned this into conditioned space, opened the wall up, and eliminated a wall. On the outside here, we would have had that door, the exterior pedestrian door that was abandoned. There would have been a wall in this area. If you take that into account, a wall here would have been about the size of a single bay garage back then. So all of this has been turned into conditioned area. It goes into the kitchen. It looks good. We're checking the doors, see if they bind, see if they failed to latch, see if they're out of square. The problem is that these are additions. These aren't original. Back here we have the exterior door that is original, but we don't know how much work has been done over the years. I can feel the very rough surface right there. I would wager that that door has been trimmed down. So it's not binding now. In fact, I can see a little a change in dimension there. So they came in with a planer to skip that, and that eliminated some binding, I suspect. This glass is not tempered glass. If they built this house today, that would be tempered glass. Because this window is within 24 inches of the arc of that door, it has to be tempered glass. But this is original, so it's not tempered. I have to report that as a deficiency. There's no requirement that anybody bring it up to code. It's just that I'm required to report that. And there we go. So we have a door that has been adjusted and a window where there's no evidence of adjustment. So if I'm sitting here evaluating the foundation, I would say 73-year-old door, I expect it to be trimmed a time or two. That is more than 24 inches, so this window does not have to be tempered glass. And this again is an original window. And there's no binding and no evidence that it's been adjusted any. Let's do one more window as an example of what we do to all of them. So, the door that has been added as a part of the laundry conversion does not bind, but that's not good evidence of foundation. The three windows that are original do not bind. That is good evidence of good performance on the foundation. The door in the back has been adjusted, which may reflect movement, but not so much that I see it as a problem. So assuming that everything else panned out exactly this way, my evaluation of performance is that it's functional. As a bonus, I'm going to use the thermal camera to look at the exterior walls. These older homes did not have insulation in the outside wall, and that was a part of the problem where you drafted air through. At one time, there was probably a whole house fan up here that exhausted and pulled air through the walls, through the windows, through the doors. But that's been eliminated, and the current energy codes require this house to be sealed tight, so you're not going to get that kind of draft. I'm not required to have or use this thermal camera, but since I do, it's a very good tool to look at these exterior walls. So let's just see what we've got here. This is the back left bedroom. I'm getting temperatures of about 84 degrees. But let's look back here. It's dropped quite a bit. Now, we're actually seeing the air being blown on it. But over here, I would say this back wall is insulated, whereas the side wall is not. That would probably clue us in that that wall was completely off at one point. So we have the front, this faces north, 80 degrees. I would say that these are the original walls that don't have any insulation. Again, we see the air being blown off the wall. Okay, let's go to the front room. I'm sorry, let's go to the back bedroom. This is an interior wall, and this we get to the south wall, the southern wall. And I would say that that wall has not been replaced because there's no insulation. So it looks like of all three bedrooms, we have one room where the wall came off enough for them to add insulation to it. So now we have the southern facing wall of the back right bedroom, and it looks like that wall has not been completely redone because there's no insulation in the wall. And you'll notice this window. This is the window that had a solar screen on it, and I'm getting a temperature reading of about 84 degrees there. and we'll compare that to another room. Let's go to the front. And we have to recognize that this window is under a porch cover and is facing the north and isn't being hit by the sun the way the other one is. But the temperature there is a little different than the other. There's too many factors there. But I do believe we can show that the solar screen improved performance or eliminated some of that heat there. Now this is the area that has been completely redone because it appeared that it used to be a garage. And if we look on this back wall, we see evidence that insulation has been added. You can even see the fasteners there. There's enough of a contrast. And here we have the exterior. What does that look like? Well, that's our exterior door. That's the door that was eliminated. And they did add insulation in that cavity. And here we have a division between the habitable space and the laundry room. And it looks like insulation was added up on that wall. So my best guess, my reasonable assumption, is those walls that are colder and appear to have insulation in them, the drywall was removed entirely. So we have the new area, and we have the back left bedroom, the back wall of the back left bedroom. Everything else appears to be original, and that means those are uninsulated or are simply going to be warmer rooms. And that's why it's going to be critical that their AC performance stays good. I told you a while ago that one of the first things you do is you record the temperature that this was at. So on the heat where we're at now, I'm bringing it down to 68 where we found it. I'm moving it to cold, and I want to make sure it's at 80 degrees because that's where we found it. And I'm going to take a picture right here to prove it. I'm not going to put that in the report, but if I'm ever called upon to prove that I reset the thermostat, I can do that. We've reset the thermostat, so we're good there. Cut off all the lights. I think we've pretty much done on the interior, and let's just move to a wrap-up. So we finished another inspection. The house is in pretty good shape. I'm going to say that the foundation is fine, but I'm also going to have to tell that client that the roof's got some work to be done. The HVAC systems, the water systems, everything seems to be working well. The biggest issue is that with all this remodeling that's taken place, there might be some things that are hidden, some damage that was hidden. So I need to make the client aware that this is an evaluation of what we can see. I don't have a crystal ball. So all I can see is what's visible. Something to note, this is an older home. I've already said several times it's over 70 years old. And it's a small home, and it's been remodeled. And it's in an area that went down and came back up. But as an inspector, I have to come here and remember one thing, that whoever is buying this house, it's a lot of money to them. This may be all the money they have, and this may be the most they can afford, and they may be excited to get it because they finally are able to buy a home. So you just have to remember, small or not, old or not, my job as an inspector is just as important, if not more important, to that home buyer than to a buyer of $1 million home. These people have less to lose. So just remember that you're serving that client. Just do the best job you can. My name is Clay Collins. The business is Grace Home Inspection Services. You're welcome to look at the website, which is gracehis.com, or my Facebook page, which is Grace Home Inspection Services, LLC. There are a lot of crazy photographs that I have in there, and they're fun to post and they're fun to look at, so I encourage you to look at that. I'm a licensed home inspector since 2004, certified master inspector for InterNACHI. I'm code certified in the residential code, the commercial code, the energy code, the accessibility code. I'm a Texas accessibility specialist. tile roof certified installer, and a certified pool operator. That keeps me off the street learning all that stuff. You're welcome to contact me. My email is clay@gracehis.com. Thank you for joining us.